Good afternoon, everyone. It is great to be here with you all this weekend in Overland Park, Kansas. To start off, I would like to extend my gratitude to the Wolcott Foundation for funding my graduate degree at the George Washington University. I hope my presentation conveys the extent to which your generosity positively impacts the lives of young students like me wanting to pursue higher education and give back to our communities, our country, and our world. Mike Clark, thank you for inviting me to be the featured speaker at this luncheon and for spearheading the Wolcott Fellowship at GW. Bob Morton, thank you for arranging my travel and for the all-important task of managing the purse strings. For me, life consists of three distinct, constantly shifting phases: the past, the present, and the future. One thing that the Wolcott Fellowship has encouraged me to do, both at the time of filling out my application in January 2020 and more recently as I prepared this presentation, is to take stock in how all the unique people and experiences in my life have converged and led to this moment, and how they will continue to shape my trajectory moving forward. To that end, I divided this presentation into three main parts. The first is the past, where I have been; the second, the present, where I am; and third, the future, where I want to be. I will then discuss how Wolcott has helped me get from where I was to where I am, and hopefully to where I want to be. One of the most fundamental aspects of my being, and certainly the most visible one, is my disabilities. They are something I have dealt with since the day I was born, and that have fundamentally shaped my outlook toward others and the world. Although difficult at times, I like to think of my disabilities as a blessing, because without them, I do not believe I would have the same strength, courage, and empathy. Eleanor Roosevelt's quote etched at the beginning of the FDR Memorial in D.C. has always spoken to me. People with disabilities must, she says, in quotes, think out the fundamentals of living and learn the greatest of all lessons: infinite patience and never-ending persistence. Because life has not always been easy for me, I want to make it easier for others who do not always have a voice and who are struggling to break through their own barriers. That is my public service motivation. At birth, I was diagnosed with Pierre-Robin syndrome and a bilateral cleft palate, and immediately airlifted by helicopter from Winter Haven to Tampa, Florida. Deprived of oxygen and having spent my first few months in the hospital, the doctors believed I would never speak, walk, or hear. Against all odds, I not only developed the ability to walk and hear, but also learned to speak both Dutch and English at an early age. The specialists did, however, get one thing right: I would have a growth deficiency. Attempting to curb this, I took growth hormones for 3 years, but the results were not as successful as we had hoped, and I stopped growing at a whopping 4 feet and 8 inches tall. And during sophomore year of high school, I was also forced to give up what I loved most: playing soccer and baseball. With developmental dysplasia of the hips and unable to walk, I was bound to a wheelchair while my parents and I searched for a pediatric surgeon willing to perform surgery. A year later, after countless visits to specialists at renowned pediatric hospitals, a double hip replacement was scheduled for the summer of 2013. After a long recovery and intensive therapy, along with the support of family and friends, I regained my physical abilities and went on to walk across the stage as valedictorian of Montfort Academy's class of 2015. And it was extra cool because actor Jack Black was our commencement speaker. He gave us, quotes, golden nuggets of wisdom. For example, don't pursue higher education and just live off your parents for the rest of your life. And clearly, I took that wisdom to heart. In addition to dealing with disabilities, my childhood was also unconventional because of where I went to school. After the divorce, my mother single-handedly raised me while putting herself through school and working at Cracker Barrel to ensure we had a better life. She obtained her bachelor's in French from the University of Central Florida and landed a teaching job at Montfort Academy, a prestigious international boarding school located just outside Orlando. She later earned a master's in teaching English to speakers of other languages. Montfort Academy exposed me to a variety of people and cultures at a very early age, 8 years old to be exact. I befriended and studied with peers from over 90 different countries, including China, Brazil, Senegal, Ireland, Nigeria, Vietnam, and Costa Rica. It was like a mini United Nations. In the faculty housing where I lived with my mother, our neighbors consisted of a Brazilian Colombian and an Argentine Polish couple, plus a Jamaican woman and a Greek Cypriot man, also my beloved high school history professor featured in the top left photo. We regularly shared meals and holidays together with unique dishes and drinks from our respective countries. But the Greek barbecues with lamb kebabs were always my personal favorite. If my physical disability sparked my public service motivation, and Montfort Academy sparked my interest in international affairs, Rollins College sparked my passion for democracy and human rights. Coming of age during a global democratic recession reminiscent of the 1930s, I wanted to dedicate my personal, academic, and professional life to understanding how we can strengthen democratic institutions, norms, and values, both at home and abroad. Democracy and human rights are deeply personal to me. During World War II in the Netherlands, my opa hid in the culvert with his mother, as his father, a mason by trade, was taken to build airplane strips for the Nazis. In another nearby town, my oma's parents hid Jews and Catholics in their barn. These stories, passed down over the decades, have had a profound impact on my desire to carry on my family's legacy by speaking out against injustice. I tailored my classes' extracurricular activities and research accordingly. I settled on obtaining 2 degrees for the price of 1, political science and philosophy. My favorite courses included my senior seminar on democratic backsliding, public policy analysis, revolution in the modern world, Middle East politics, modern philosophy, and the philosophy of nonviolence, which was actually co-taught by Mahatma Gandhi's grandson, Arun Gandhi. I was also accepted into the Bonner Leaders Program, a 4-year cohort-based community service program that awards $3,000 per year scholarships to 10 incoming students for their commitment to 300 service hours per academic year, in addition to the completion of 5 Bonner Leadership training courses and a senior capstone. During my first year, I volunteered with Special Olympics and the Conductive Education Center of Orlando, both nonprofits focused on the development of children and young adults with disabilities through education and sport. From my second year onward, I started volunteering with the Rollins College Democracy Project, a nonpartisan organization that engages students in the democratic process. I joined at a pivotal time in our nation's politics, the fall leading up to the contentious 2016 presidential election. Our team increased campus turnout by 7.6% from 2012 to 2016, and Rollins received All In-Campus Democracy Challenge's Best in Class Award for having the highest voting rate among 4-year medium private institutions in 2016. I was promoted to student coordinator my junior year, tasked with managing a team of about 12 ambassadors and planning and coordinating at least 3 nonpartisan civic education and engagement initiatives per month. These included voter registration drives, presentations to classes and student groups, voting simulations, and everyone's favorite, politics on tap. Because what is better than discussing politics with some alcohol? Under my leadership, we focused heavily on the importance of local politics, which is often overshadowed by national politics. Our innovative programming increased campus turnout by 87.6% from the 2014 to 2018 midterms, and the Washington Post picked up our story, reached out to Rollins to interview us, and published an article recognizing Rollins as a national model for civic engagement. And despite our success, it was often disconcerting to hear the number of young people who believed their vote did not matter. These grievances led me to compare the effects of electoral rules on voters' behaviors in Ireland, the Netherlands, and the United States. For my senior thesis, I considered how majoritarian and proportional electoral arrangements in these three countries influence citizens' efficacy, knowledge, and sophistication levels, and how, in turn, they affect voter turnout. My big takeaway is that our electoral rules impose greater informational costs and offer fewer participatory incentives, causing Americans to know very little about politics and feel their vote doesn't much matter. As a result, we as citizens are more polarized, alienated, and disengaged from the political system than ever before. I then argued that proportional electoral laws, more like those in Ireland or the Netherlands, can positively and meaningfully change how Americans feel about and engage in the democratic process. By the end of my Rollins career, I received a wider range of awards that recognize my work both in the classroom and in the community. These included the Newman Civic Fellowship, Outstanding Senior Scholar in the Social Sciences, the N. Ronald Peace Service to Campus Award, as well as Outstanding Academic Achievement in both political science and philosophy. For me, theory and practice should always go hand in hand, as these honors highlight. Theory encourages deeper, systematic, and big-picture thinking, and practice emphasizes ordinary, everyday impact. Whether in my research or in my service, I always strive to have theory and practice inform each other. After Rollins, I decided to pursue a Master of Public Administration to further translate my liberal arts education into tangible policy solutions. GW would equip me with the how to carry out the why, the where, and the what I had already discovered. I was accepted and offered scholarships at Cornell University, Columbia University, and the George Washington University. I ultimately settled on GW because of the opportunities DC could offer that Ithaca, New York could not. GW was also significantly cheaper, thanks to the Wolcott Fellowship, than Columbia. The MPA program equipped me with technical, transferable skills like budgeting, economics, policy analysis, program evaluation, and statistics that I could apply to any topic while simultaneously crafting my own concentration. I created my own concentration called Democracy, Rights, and Governance, and took elective courses through the Elliott School of International Affairs. These courses included Democracy and Governance Development, Nationalism, Populism and Illiberalism, and European Affairs. Outside my coursework, I worked part-time at Issue 1, a nonprofit advocating for federal political reform on issues like elections, campaign finance, modernization of Congress, and general government ethics. I was tasked with conducting advocacy with conservative communities such as business and faith leaders and leveraging those relationships to gain bipartisan public and congressional support for our proposed reforms. My most significant project was spearheading the Business for Elections Coalition, in which I organized an alliance of 39 civil society organizations and coordinated with their executives to create a substantive list of 27 action items for businesses to help ensure a fair, safe, and secure 2020 U.S. election. After a very draining election season, I decided to take a step back from Issue 1 and focus on my senior capstone with the World Bank. My teammates and I were tasked with identifying the laws, policies, and cultural norms that allow for the continuation and high prevalence of female genital mutilation and cutting in the Republic of Djibouti and throughout the Middle East North Africa region. This capstone required analyzing a lot of survey data from UNICEF and the Djibouti government, as well as evaluating the effectiveness of existing FGM programs in Djibouti. At the end of the semester, we presented our research findings and recommendations to the World Bank and the academic faculty and peers of the Trachtenberg School at GW. As I was wrapping up my graduate degree, I landed a contract position as a security assistant with the U.S. Department of State's Diplomatic Security Bureau. Waiting for my security clearance over the summer allowed me to reset after 20-plus straight years of school and to spend quality time with my family and friends in Florida. I received my interim clearance in July 2021 and moved back to D.C. to start my new job in August. Within 6 months, I switched to a better contract, and just 1 month later I was promoted on the new contract to investigative case specialist. As an investigator, I primarily do 3 things. 1, I analyze cases to determine what kind of investigation is required and the scope of that investigation. 2, I conduct interviews with security clearance applicants and correspond with other federal agencies and our embassies abroad to gather information about that applicant. And 3, I review security clearance packages for completion and accuracy and input that information into government databases. I typically manage 25 cases at one time, each with its own unique circumstances and challenges, and at different points in the investigative process. Essentially, I am a glorified Facebook stalker who gets to learn all the juicy details about one's financial, drug, alcohol, criminal, and marital history. So, fun stuff. And while in my contract position, I applied for and was selected as a finalist for the Presidential Management Fellowship, or PMF, in the class of 2022. And PMF is a 2-year leadership development fellowship that matches recent graduate students with civil service jobs at participating federal agencies. After 2 years, PMFs can convert into permanent federal civilian employees. Since being selected last December in 2021, I have applied to over 65 PMF jobs. Within the last few weeks, I interviewed for positions with the Department of Agriculture, Department of Treasury, Department of Homeland Security, and the U.S. Agency for International Development. So far, I have received 2 offers from Treasury, at everyone's favorite agency, the Internal Revenue Service, IRS, but I'm also still awaiting offers from the other agencies before making a final decision. And this fellowship not only allows me to transition from contractor to civil servant, but also opens the door to transition between federal agencies more easily. After receiving an initial appointment at the host agency, PMFs are allowed to do an internal rotation in another office within the same agency, followed by a longer external rotation with a totally different agency. Ideally, I would love to receive a PMF appointment at USAID or State Department, the 2 agencies I wrote about in my initial Wolcott application. Even better, I would be able to travel internationally and continue working on the democracy, human rights, and governance issues I am most passionate about. Upon completing my 2 years as a PMF, I would then like to apply to the Foreign Service and become a political affairs officer, and eventually maybe even a diplomat or an ambassador. Applying to the Foreign Service is a very extensive process and by no means a guarantee. In addition to a written exam covering politics, economics, history, management, and technology, applicants must also complete an oral exam and demonstrate proficiency in a foreign language. Even if selected, applicants must then go through a rigorous security and medical clearance process before being placed on a register and landing a placement at an embassy or consulate abroad. Foreign Service officers typically complete 2 or 3 year stints in a country before rotating to another post abroad or a home assignment back in Washington, D.C. So now that I have virtually covered my entire life, I want to take a few minutes to discuss one of the most life-changing calls. In February 2020, I received a call while studying in bed from an unknown number and decided I would let it go to voicemail. Who could possibly be calling me from Grand Rapids, Michigan? A few minutes later, I received a notification that the caller had left a voicemail, so I clicked play and listened, thinking I was about to hear from a spammer about how I'd missed important due dates for bills, or how I could consolidate my loans. Luckily for me, though, it was neither of those things. It was Mike Clark from the Wolcott Foundation. I immediately called Mike back, and he answered to share the wonderful news and extend congratulations. I was ecstatic and honored to be selected as a Wolcott Fellow, and quickly called my parents and friends to share the exciting news. The Wolcott Fellowship has shaped my life and career for the better in two significant ways. First, Wolcott provided financial stability and security, particularly during the COVID-19 pandemic. At a time when other students worried about paying tuition or student loans, I could rest easy knowing that Wolcott had my back. This allowed me to focus on my courses, career development, and spending time with family, friends, and peers without finances lingering in the back of my mind. Without the Wolcott Fellowship, I am unsure if I would have been able to complete my studies due to the financial impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. And second, Wolcott helped me to think critically about the 3 phases of life covered in my presentation, giving me more direction and solidifying a future career in public service with the U.S. federal government. I wrote specifically about working at state or USAID in my initial application. I now work at state and could potentially work at USAID through PMF. This is in no small part due to the Wolcott Fellowship. For one, having me think critically about what I want my future to look like, and 2, for signaling to employers a clear public service motivation as a scholar servant. I hope my presentation has not only fully conveyed the positive impact that the Wolcott Fellowship has had on my life, but also the potential transformative impact that the fellowship can have on other students' lives as they embark on their own unique graduate degrees and career paths. You all are an essential part of our life journeys in getting us from where we have been to where we are and to where we want to be. Your support to us, in turn, supports our communities, our country, and our world. When we do not have to worry as much about material needs like finances, we are able to focus our energy on what political scientists call, in quotes, post-material values. These include the environment, democracy, human rights, and reaching our full potential as human beings. Thanks to you all, I could focus on the latter rather than the former. No words, let alone amount of words in different languages, can fully capture how thankful I am to be a Wolcott Fellow and to be able to share my life journey with all of you today. But I hope this presentation is a sufficient start. So thank you for everything you have done, for everything you currently do, and for everything you will continue to do to make a difference in our lives. Thank you.